Hi guys, how are you? So Facebook has a little bit of a delay, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to easily see what's happening on my other feed. But I'm just going to pretend that Facebook just isn't really happening right now. So I won't be able to see what you're saying if you're on Facebook, unless maybe I can just pop over really quickly. I just wanted to talk tonight. This is some of the people that are in my group are here, and I'm not going to say their names, but we're going to be talking just really briefly about mostly on how to deal with isolation and why it could be bothering you. Okay. So, based on that, let's get going. Okay. So, um, isolation can be problematic more so because there's a lot of thoughts going on. Okay. So if you have a lot of thoughts going on and you're sort of in this place of chaos, you're going to be more stressed out. Okay. And isolation, of course, isn't fun, even for introverts or whatever. I mean, it's definitely not something that is enjoyable. It's definitely not the most fun thing in the world. But it should not be that bad. And let me explain what I mean. Most of what you're feeling isn't so much about isolation, it's about how some type of freedom is being taken away from you, whether it is creating an income, whether it is the freedom of knowing that you are predominantly safe. And there's a lot of people that just feel like this whole COVID isolation thing is overblown. Some people think that it's just not enough. So what you're seeing then is a lot of people, especially on social networking, and these people are posting. I post, other people post, so everyone has their own opinions. The problem comes when you're posting or sharing just for the sake of sharing for whatever reason, and someone, excuse me, the weather thing went off again. But what happens then is there are individuals who just feel very self-righteous, like, their way is better, or they're telling you you should or should not do X, Y, or Z. And that can become really toxic. But you have to understand that everybody is handling stress in a different way. Some people feel better by feeling like they need to control. Okay. So someone who is more apt to need controlling types of behaviors will target other people that they feel that they can control. People who just want to vent, sometimes they just want to vent. So arguing with them isn't really a good idea. I know it can be really frustrating. And so this is more of the social networking aspect of it. And so what happens is a lot of people are stressed out, and then they go on social networking just to interact a little bit. And then they get caught up in the negativity. And as somebody who has posted before and just observed a little bit and interacted, but also observed, most people are really not out, even if they seem like they're really angry or attacking or whatever. Most people are really not out to create enemies. They just want to be heard, and everyone wants to be affirmed. So let's just take we're putting isolation on the shelf first, because what is more isolating than not being accepted? Evolutionary speaking, people like to be accepted. And if you're not accepted, all of a sudden it can become like, what you're worth if you're not accepted. Or does that mean you are devalued? Or does it mean that you are isolated from other people? Does it mean there's something wrong with you in some way? So when you have different levels of not being affirmed, or other people, for whatever reason, are not affirming you, you can easily feel more isolated. Now, the trick is to not care. And there are a lot of people, especially extroverted thinkers, are going to care more about what other people are saying or doing. And it's not because they have lower self-esteem, it's just because they're more an external processor. So the feedback that they get is something that they take in and really kind of put through the ringer a few times and then bring it back out again. It might take them a little longer, actually, to decide this or that isn't worth the drama. An internal processor, even if they seem like they're more outgoing or more chatty, an internal processor doesn't really care what other people's opinions are. They might just throw something up on social networking and not care that much if you agree with them or disagree. The reason why I'm bringing this up to preface isolation is right now, you just have to realize that everybody's in a crisis. They might not seem like they're in a crisis, and if they're angry, or if they are saying that they don't care, or if they are saying that whatever, if they're just saying like, I'm not going to wear a mask, I think this whole thing is stupid, they're still in a crisis. They're just in a different crisis than you are. Everyone's in a crisis right now. Everyone. Let me also just state, do not think for a moment that children are not in crisis. Do not think for a moment that children are resilient and they're just going to get over this. Just because children are not expressing how they're feeling, because they can't put into words the feelings that they have. Children traditionally come to the table with, just like in a school setting, like when I've seen children in the past in a school setting, children come to the table with stomach aches, headaches. They come to the table with different types of behaviors that look like they're acting out, but really what they're doing is trying to process these uncomfortable feelings. Now, right now, my guess is it's not even happening quite yet, but very soon you're going to see a lot of behaviors where kids and parents are going to be fighting a lot. Parents are stressed, kids are stressed. A lot of the teachers right now who are not used to A, working from home, and B, online. I mean, online teaching is a whole different entity, okay? So if you went from, now understand this as a parent, if you went from your children's teachers are traditionally in a classroom setting and have been taught, trained, and experienced in a certain type of a setting, and all of a sudden now they're in a different setting. It's different than if you are just as a group in your corporation having online work. If you're not used to it, it's a very different thing. So teachers even are not used to, especially if they have children at home, this is new to them. So teaching is not new to them, but teaching online is probably very new to them. And many of them probably did not have many online classes. So the stress levels of everybody is up, okay? Now, this is why this is important. If everybody's stress levels are up, and if everybody is in some level of feeling uncomfortable and some level of feeling like they're unhappy in some way, whether it's anger, whether it is sadness, fear, combination of all of the above. Maybe there are families that are at war right now, politics are at war right now, religions are even coming into this. Like there's so much happening right now that there is so much chaos. When there is chaos and when there's hyper emotion happening, the frontal lobe starts to cut out a little bit, like it dulls itself out to let the emotion do its thing. And that's part of survival. But when you have it prolonged, it just becomes chronic stress. Chronic stress with all of the news and everything that we're seeing, especially if you are watching the news or online, seeing different headlines or whatever. And I'm not saying that the news is in any way, shape, wrong. I am someone who does not feel like the media is fake or anything. I feel like the media is a scapegoat sometimes, and yeah, they make mistakes like everyone does. And I don't want to get into this. Like, if you don't agree with me, it is what it is, right? I'm an INTJ, internal processor. You have your opinion, I have mine, whatever. But my point of this is, regardless of how you feel about the media is bringing to the table truth, some truths at least. Okay, let's put it that way. There's some truths that are coming to the table, and they're uncomfortable truths for most people. And politicians are triggering a lot of people. People need, when they are in crisis or stress, they need to find scapegoats, because when you are feeling vulnerable and that you feel like your freedoms are taken away and you feel like you're afraid to maybe go out, I mean, all of these things add up to you being in crisis. And it doesn't matter where the crisis is coming from. I'm bringing up a lot of different things here It doesn't matter where the crisis is coming from right now, it's a crisis. With children, they are not going to react the same way that an adult will. They are not going to process nor present many of the same ways that an adult will. And adults right now and children are still coming to the table with all the other stuff that you had going on. So whatever happened 6 months ago, whatever kind of things you were going through, maybe you were in a tough marriage, maybe you were in a relationship that was up and down, maybe you're single and really yearning for some type of a relationship, maybe you weren't making enough money, maybe you couldn't make ends meet 6 months ago. What do you think it's happening? What's happening now? Even if you have temporary support right now, which many people do, and I've heard many people say, I'm making more now than I did when I was working. So for those people, that's going to run out. And so everyone is under some level of band-aid or some level of increased stress, even if that increased stress means the more income I have right now because I was not making much before, is going to run out. And then what am I going to do? Or, I mean, I can go into a lot of different things that could be happening for you. But the bottom line is whether it is children, whether it is you, isolation is not only is it uncomfortable, but it's dangerous. So years and years ago, I believe it was the Quaker community, when they would basically, when they would have someone who was, and I'm talking in ancient times, not anything recent, in ancient times, and don't even hold me to that it was the Quaker community, because if it wasn't, it will look like I'm trying to single them out, and I'm not. I'm going from memory, which could be very wrong here. But it was a religious community that when they had someone who did something wrong, their jail or their shunning was not to just put the person, away from the group, but it was to put the person in isolation, kind of like a TP situation where there was some light and some air coming in, but really very much in isolation. Why are jails these days? Why is the worst thing to be in isolation? Isolation is ultimately the most unhealthy thing for your emotions in your mind. So for those of you who are single in isolation, this is not good, right? Even if you have a family, it can be very trying. So when you're in isolation, this is the hardest thing that you will go through emotionally in your life, probably, because being separated from other people is the ultimate form of punishment in many communities and societies through history. Being shunned in the Amish community is a very big, I mean, on the surface, it might not sound like much, like, okay, like everybody in the community doesn't want to deal with me. Well, you know what? After time, that could be very bad in the Amish community where they don't have a lot of, theoretically speaking, internet and everything else to stay connected. So when you are in isolation, like right now, even though the ban is going to be lifted, even though we're going to start interacting, hopefully sooner than later, safely, of course, the effects of what we've already been through and the emotions that you've already seen, the interactions you've already had with people are part of the stressors that will stay with you for months or potentially years. And you really have to focus on healing that and forgiving more and forgiving yourself. You have to forgive yourself for the things you might have said or done. You have to forgive others for the things they may have said or done. And I don't mean you have to, but it's good for you to do this, okay? So as Stuart Smalley used to say, don't shit on yourself. I know that's a bad joke. Anyway, well, actually, it's a really good joke. It made him a lot of money. But anyway, the point is that by creating a different type of an outlook, a different type of, instead of seeing the doom and gloom of what's happening, look at the silver linings. And I know for a lot of people, it's really hard to just like look at the silver linings, especially if you've already been dealing with depression, anxiety, loss of income, even before all of this, health issues before all of this. I totally get it. Like, I'm not saying that you should magically just wake up and be happy, but, and I know that people get very upset when they hear this phrase, happiness is a choice. And I know easier said than done, but happiness is a choice. Now, you might have been taught as a youngster that, here's a very common one. working hard is good. And some people weren't taught that working hard is good. Some people were taught that working smart was good. So you can either work really hard and bust your backside, or you can just work smarter. So there's different ways of looking at the situation. So if you feel, and I'm using the working hard as an example first, if you feel that working very hard is success, if you feel that you don't deserve unless you sacrifice and unless you're exhausted, then you're never going to really look at gifts that are given you, or easy ways out that you can even create yourself as a level of success. So you will kind of always be in that nose to the grindstone kind of a thing, right? Because you were taught, and your belief system is that working hard and a certain level of suffering is needed to have a certain level of assets. But if you were taught that you don't have to work that hard, sorry about this. If you were taught that you did not have to work that hard to have good things in life, if you were taught that you deserve things, you will not look at work the same way. You will look at work as career or fulfilling, and not that it has to be exhausting. Does that make sense to you? So if we take this a step further and look at isolation, is it that you have, and I'm not going into a political space here, so I don't mean to go into that. I don't want to hear about that part. But the day to day, do you feel that when you wake up in the morning, you are sacrificing? Or do you feel like it's different? A lot of people are not good with change. And we are normally trained that 1 to 2 weeks, 6 weeks tops, is vacation time or time away from the norm. For most people, it's 1 to 2 weeks. If you're younger, you might feel like 6 weeks is okay. And then at that point, you start to get a little antsy. So what happens is our brains are taught and trained to have this mentality. So the first couple of weeks of isolation for most people, or lockdown or whatever you're in, unless you're sick, were inconvenient, a little stressful. But then after that, it builds and builds and builds. Now you have all the stressors that you came into this with, plus the stressors you're dealing with in your own life. Then you have like arguments and like craziness happening, or even interactions that are very violent, verbally violent, emotionally violent happening. So like, where's the fun in that, right? So you have all of this happening. So when you have all of this crisis and stress happening, what do you do, and how do you see the silver linings? And the only way I can really offer is, if being online bothers you, stop being online, or unfollow all of the people that bug you, or make a different account, or whatever, or go on different social networking that isn't so abrasive. Now, I would say the most abrasive place is Twitter right now, and then second place, a close second, would be Facebook. The happy places, Pinterest, Instagram. So these are the happy places. So you can still connect with people, and you can be in those places. However, that being said, I feel that for musicians, for artists, for individuals who need to have like a tip jar, basically, and play their music and share what they love, I think Facebook is the place for that. And for a lot of people, you know what? If you're going to be on Facebook anyway, seek out the people that are doing this and help. For those of you who did not give away your stimulus check, for those of you who still have that, if you didn't donate it, this would be a good time to just take, $10. And even if you have to do $5 of this person, $5 of that person, if you can afford it, definitely do that. It feels good to be able to do that. These are just ways that you can kind of control more of your situation. Now, isolation, like I said, is it's just horrible. You need to make sure, especially for most of us where we're going into spring and summer, even if the ban doesn't, even if the ban's not lifted, if you are in isolation for whatever reason, if we, for whatever reason, have a couple more months of this, you need to be strong enough, resilient enough to make it work for you, and I'm not saying that you have to just say, like, I'm not saying that if you want to protest, don't protest, or whatever. I'm not going in, again, it's not about the politics. I'm only just talking about the resilience package of this, okay? So we package ourselves to be a certain way and we train ourselves to work that package, whatever that package is. So whatever your identity is for you is your package, okay? Then when change happens, the package has to change a little bit. And if you're not comfortable with the package changing, then you're going to have increased stress. If you had anxiety before, it's going to get worse. If you had depression before, it's going to get worse. So until you make those changes and train yourself to be happier, train yourself to see the bright side. You have a more flexible schedule, get outside more, read books, take a course. Like there's a million things that you can do if you look for them. Or you can just not, and you can just complain and you can be really miserable. And guess what? Tomorrow morning, if nothing changes in your favor or whatever the agenda is for you, you could end up being much more unhappy. And what is happening that I see a lot of is that whether it's anxiety, fear, anger, it doesn't matter what it is, people's issues, they tend to want to spread the issue around. So if you're really angry about something, you want other people to know it. If you're really worried about something, you want other people to know it and feel it. And you want to try to resist that urge. I mean, I've been doing it lately where I might post something and I just take it down. As soon as I see that people start to argue or whatever, I'll just take it down now. And sometimes the intent of what you're sharing, whether it is on Instagram or Pinterest or anywhere, is not to create a problem. It's just to say like, wow, this is an interesting bit of information. And what's happening, because people are so stressed, is that people are jumping on it like, that's not true, that's true, or that's this, or that's that. And then because people are so stressed. So again, going back to the beginning, you've got to try to forgive. I'm not saying you have to accept what they're saying or doing, but forgive. Just give a little bit more of compassion because they're in the same boat as you are. They might be handling it differently, but they're in the same boat. Like there's no one that's up here and then there's people down here. Like it's not that way. So the complainer is in the same level as you are. Okay. The person who's like a victim right now and you're just like, oh my God, like just, suck it up, whatever. They're still in the same place as you. So because people handle things differently doesn't make one better than the other. So the people that are like protesting with guns and whatever, okay, that could also be like a gang, whatever you want to call it. I don't agree with that, but I'm not saying that they're any worse off than the person who's just complaining about it online, right? Because um, when you're complaining, you're still bringing someone down. You're still maybe trying to oppress someone. Does that make any sense? I know I'm not saying that like, obviously someone with a gun is a little bit more dangerous than someone not, but you get what I'm saying here, right? It's about the emotions, not about the physical situations. Now, one more thing that I want to bring up, and then I have to get going, but one more thing that I want to bring up is if you are really struggling and if you are feeling overwhelmed, I am not seeing new clients right now unless you're already on my mailing list. If you're already someone that's connected to me, awesome. But I have enough people over there that I'm not taking new clients, but you should get in contact with someone who is taking clients, which is a lot of therapists. There's a lot of therapists out there that are taking clients and are doing telehealth. So I highly suggest that you contact them. I have quite a few friends that are therapists that are on my personal and professional pages, and they're in different states. Some of them are very close by. Some of them are in Michigan, mainline. Like I have a lot of different contacts. So if you need someone, just let me know. Just email me and I can put you in touch with someone that I think would be a really good fit for you or give you a list of people. You can go on Psychology Today and find someone. There's definitely people out there to help you, and there's definitely support groups out there. And I do feel that that is probably the healthiest place to vent and to speak and to be accepted and affirmed, because once you are feeling more accepted and affirmed and that your opinions matter, you're going to feel less chaotic, and isolation or even the stress of COVID or jobs and all of that will feel less. We're going to have to be more resilient. So even if the bans are lifted a little bit in phases, it doesn't matter how it goes, we still have to be much more resilient than we are right now. I'm looking around and I've seen a lot of people falling apart, and we need to breathe. We need to work on self-care. eat healthy, make sure you get outside, make sure you get sunlight, take your vitamin D3, take your zinc, like your vitamin C, take the things that will boost your immune system. Again, get outside, exercise, move around as much as you can, interact in a healthy way and in a positive way as much as you can. And don't be so silent when you see people saying negative things to maybe a friend or a family member. Don't be so silent and sit back. Okay. Martin Luther King said, the silence of your friends is worse than sometimes the enemy's, paraphrasing here, but it's the truth. I think it's very important to not attack anyone, but to be there for the other person. Like, let your friends know that you care about them and that they're worthy. A lot of people, there's 5 different areas actually, if you've been abused, neglected in any way, shape, or form, whether it was parents, relationships, whatever. So one of the things is that you may feel unworthy of accepting love or attention or affirmation. You might feel unworthy. You also might feel like you're really in awe of people, you really look up to people, and then they let you down. And so that's trusting someone too much. And that often comes from someone who in your past may have, really built you up, maybe love bombed, over complimented you and then took it away. So then you start to learn that you can't trust anyone. And the other area that is important, well, there's 2 more areas, a fear of success. Now, the average person is going to say, I don't have a fear of success. I want money, I want stuff, whatever. But most people, even if they have what they call success, might not be that happy with what they have, or they might be striving to have more, or they might want to be showy or whatever. Or you might actually be someone who has a fear of success and not know it, but you just never seem to be able to get by, or you're never seeming to get to that next level of what you want to achieve. And that's usually because in the past, whether it was a relationship, whether it was a parent, in some way or another, someone ingrained in you, not just said to you once or twice, but ingrained in you that your success was not interesting to them. It just didn't matter. And then you started to learn that striving for something, even if you really wanted it, probably wasn't going to work out. And there could even been people that sabotaged your success, and it just got in your mindset that that's the way it is. Mindsets are an interesting thing because people think of it as like super fluid, and it is, but you have dendrites that are like little trees that grow, and every negative experience that's repetitive grows a bigger and bigger tree, and these trees become overpowering, like big oak trees or weeping willows over top of anything that could be positive. So it takes a lot of growing other stuff to grow it above those other trees. So if you had all of these trees being nurtured and nourished as you were growing up, that you weren't worthy, or success wasn't for you, or you had to work hard to get somewhere and you could never work hard enough to get to this level, what will happen is you will pretty much be at a status quo or struggling until you start to try to break out of that. Now, all of this really matters for isolation. I'm going to tell you why in 1 minute. The last area that I want to go into is intimacy. If you were struggling with intimacy before, there is no magic cure for it. There is no formula for finding the right person or anything like that. But intimacy is a struggle because in the past, somehow, whether it was a relationship or whether it was starting out with parents, usually one parent emotionally or physically checked out. And these are areas that are basically, if you're struggling in intimacy, I don't want to, there's so much to it, but if you're struggling in intimacy, there's a lot of different ways that you are then in chaos. Okay. You don't trust yourself. You don't trust other people. There's a lot of walls up. You might really want love, but you don't know what it looks like. Or you might really want love, but you don't trust that it's going to happen for you deep down. Therefore, you might be attracted to the wrong person, kind of subconsciously knowing that you're going to end that relationship, or maybe you can fix them or whatever. Why this matters for isolation right now is because you're already coming to the table potentially with a lot of struggles that you might not realize that you have. And then you put all of this on top of it. So if you're already in isolation, your intimacy is going to struggle even more. If you're having money issues, the success component is going to struggle more. If you are in, I keep looking over here because the door is going to open any minute, or they might go around to the front. I'm going to get going because my grandson is here. But there's a lot of different ways that you might be struggling, because if you are struggling in any of these ways, feeling unworthy, not having intimacy, a million different ways, you're going to struggle more in isolation. So you have to work on the core issues that are happening. This is the time to do it. Work on these core issues, build your resiliency, build your immune system, and really focus on just being happier with yourself so that you can be more uh, transparent when you are interacting with people from a distance, so you can be more real and more truthful. And when you're more truthful and real with yourself, you can accept that more with other people too, because it's nothing's meant to hurt anyone. Try not to be self-righteous, no matter what your belief system is, whether it's political or religious, because when you're self-righteous and you assume your way is the only way, regardless of what your belief system is, and everyone has one, it's elementary to think that other people's belief systems aren't as important as yours. They might not be the same, but it doesn't mean that anyone is less than you. So understand that if someone's treating you that way, that's their issue. It's their hang up. It doesn't mean you should attack them for it. Okay. So all of these things that I'm bringing up, you might see in yourself, but you might see in other people as well. And if you see them in other people, don't attack them. Everyone's on their own path, and everyone deserves to be respected and cared for as a human and loved as a person. And just really quickly on my mom's last words when she was dying over 20 years ago now is that all that matters in life is to love and to forgive. And I think that my mother was just an amazing human being. And in fact, my dad was an amazing person too. And I keep something right here on my desk at all times. This is a note that let me see if you can see it. This is a note that he wrote me a few months before before he passed away. And you could see it's on a to-do list. I don't know if you could see that. It's just a to-do list. And he wrote it to me, and it's very emotional and very beautiful, but I keep it right there just to remind myself of how my family saw me, how my parents saw me. And if you can tap into how the people that love you, what they see in you, and what your true value is, like what you're really worth, a lot of this stuff begins to not matter, right? Like, I know it's an inconvenience, and I know there's a lot of problems connected to it, but if you have self-love and you have care and you have a roof over your head, or you have friends that can help you to keep a roof over your head or whatever, if you have the ability to care about yourself and to care about others, to love and to forgive, you're going to get through this okay. So life is going to have its ups and downs, and we're all going through something together. And I know it's very cliche that we're like together but apart, blah, blah, blah. But what really matters is your ability to love and forgive. So on that note, I am going to just squeeze my little grandson upstairs. I can't wait to see him. I hope this has helped a little bit. You can definitely, if you're a female, you can join the Sanity Soiree. And I call it the Sanity Soiree because, I went through a lot of different things. I used to call things, very typical. I used to have very typical kind of like, the opening lotus and things like that, very typical coachy, therapeutic, self-helpy kind of stuff, but that's not me. So for me, the Sanity Soiree is because I think healing should feel like a celebration at a party. So I don't feel like we have to struggle through and open wounds and then be really uncomfortable. I think that we can laugh through some of the stuff. I think we can be really positive. The Sanity Soiree is free for women only. And if you want to join, let me know. All right. I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.